Greetings, Pilgrims, and welcome to another episode of the Polygon Pilgrimage. And today, as you can see, we've got quite a mess of lines here, but that's okay. We're going to break it down for you. This will be a multi-part thing because there's a lot to cover here. I wanted to show you, this is our geometric shape mandala type looking box here we've got going on. I've had a lot of fun with this. This was quite the challenge, and I wanted to break up my skill set and say, let's see what we can do. Let's see if we can break this down and make this shape. I've had several users who have said they're really interested in some of the circular designs I've been doing. And while this is not entirely circular, I mean, we have a couple circles. Another user sent me something similar to this, and they said, how would you make this? So I wanted to show this to help that user out, and also I figured let's go ahead and share this with you guys. And so we're going to go ahead and break this down. The 10,000 foot view is, I have here my reference, so it's just this image brought in. Very nice here. And then I looked at this and said, this outer ring here where it connects to these things, I wanted that to be sort of a gold metal type thing, so that's what we got going on here. And then these parts inside, they ended up looking kind of like pretzels to me, these little geometric shapes here. Those things, and I thought, oh, this nice sun flare, sunburst in the middle, that would be kind of cool. And then as we work our way into the middle shapes there, and I simplified some things, and I used even numbers where there's some odd numbers in here, so it's not an exact replica, but I think it looks pretty cool. It looks like a really ancient puzzle box, kind of treasure box thing. It's pretty fun. So I think it worked out quite well. So looking at this in the overall view, basically what we have is over here are all of our shape builds. So these are all the little sections, and I explain what we're building and why. And then here I have what I call the mask factory. So this is where I build all the different masks. And you can see I just brought them all over here, and all these little, looks like a box of wires here. So these are all the masks, and you can see up here, here's the main one that gets built up, and we'll come back to that to show you. Our final outputs here, this one's pretty simple, so we'll actually kind of begin at the end. So for the final mask outputs here, the height we build from a whole different section, the normal we build from a whole different section. The roughness and the metallic and the diffuse we actually build from these two materials. And these are materials I will put in the description that I got from the substance share. There's this two of them. There's a marble, and then there's another one for the actual metal here. So those are the two that I used, but here I used the marble and I just made different variants of it. So let me pull this over here. I had it all nice and big for screenshots to show off how awesome this looks. Okay, so using the marble here, I just changed some of the parameters. Basically, this was a light version and this is a dark version. That's really all I did, was change the colors. And the only other option I changed here was this pattern scale. I put it up to 2 so that I would have less repetition of all these lines in the background here to make it so busy. It still looks really nice, but I didn't want it to be competing with all of the lines that we have going on here. So that's really all I did with that. And then the other one is down here, is it? Yes, right here. This is the other metal that I used, and this is, yeah, statue metal. And I will put a link to the description where you can get this as well. And so basically I'm just building and building and building and compounding here, and then we pump these into here at the end, and we take this out, and this makes everything that is going to be metal. And so that's really all that we got from here. So those are the two kind of beginning at the end sort of things that we did, and we'll go over this as well, but I'm going to start over here and talk about how we broke down the shapes. So let's go ahead and we don't really need the reference either because this is everything. So let's just start at the beginning. So up here, let's talk about our corner circles build. So this are these circles up in the corners here, obviously. So if we go ahead and start here, all this is a shape node. Circle, I scaled it down. And the nice thing is once you connect these things along the way, you can come back to them and say, let me adjust that and see what it looks like. So transform here, I made it a little bit smaller, and then using a trick here, so I take the shape, I transform to make it a little smaller, and now this is actually taking those two pieces, and I'm going to blend a color over top of the smallest part in the middle. So I get that ring. And the important part here is that now I can do, later on, I can do something like a mask from color. So I can take out that center part, and that's how I got these little globes on the corners. That's using this color in the middle. And then these, the white part, we're going to continue with that. And you'll see here I move it up into the corner, move the whole thing up. And then this is a blend from that corner guy. And then the same thing again, I just copy the transform, but then I hit this horizontal mirror to move them over to the corner. There we go. And this is the same thing for the transform, for the opacity here, because I needed to make sure that I got rid of, or I excluded the one on the front. I want that one to go in and this one to be there. So there we go for the copy. Okay. Now, same kind of thing again. I'm going to transform, but I'm going to use the vertical mirror and then blend those two together. Now I've got all four corners. And then here I did a levels real quick and just crunched everything to the left. And that was my opacity into the blend. And now here, if I do the color, this first one here that we do a color from mask, I'm taking just the corners. Just those, not the little glows in the middle. Then as we move over here, you'll see I'm going to combine that with these lines. So let's back up a little bit and talk about the lines. Corner lines. And I called all these build because we're just building up the shape. And we're just building up the shape in order to use it as a mask really later on. So again, shape node, this one is the square. Made it really tiny, as you can see. I'm going to transform, I'm going to rotate it 45 degrees, push it up into the corner. And again, I'm going to blend it with itself and itself horizontally mirrored. And then again, blend it with itself and itself vertically mirrored. And that gives us these little lines. And that's this part here, right there. And now we combine those two together and we get these little circle with a line coming off. And then you'll see here I'm bringing in a different shape. So let's go over here and take a look at what that is. That are these circles. So we have two things. I wrote these down as the outer circle and the inner circle. So the outer circle is this guy here. And the inner circle is just this band here. So again, shape node. And this was almost a full circle. I didn't want it to go quite all the way to the edge because I wanted this little bit of a space here to have some decoration. Then again, I transform and scale it down a bit. And then using this, as you can see, this says temporary color. This is just the color for now so that I can have some sort of coloration to this. And now blending that on top of the original one, this comes all the way down into there, I get the ring here. So now I can select color by mask to get the white to get just that ring, and that is this ring here again. So as you see, that comes over here, color to mask, I get that ring, and now I can combine them together because this has to be one continuous shape. Now I will look at the reference for a moment and you'll see what I'm talking about. In my reference, bring it up here, see there's no stoppage here. This continues right all the way through there into this ring, so that's one continuous shape. So that's why it was important for us to combine these together early on so that we have that shape. Excellent, so he gets thrown over into the mask factory. Okay, so we talked about the corner circles, we did our lines, we did outer circle. Now the inner circle, very much the same thing. So what this guy is here is we're going to take a shape, and what I did is I just took this one, since I already have a shape. We don't want to use too many of them because it can get a little boggy, so I'm going to use just the same thing. I take it and then say just transform it, and now that's my new shape. Okay, so same thing, I'm going to make this a little smaller, blending in a color over top so I get my ring. Perfect. Okay, so that guy's good, and he's going to go off into various masks and things. Okay, so let's talk about our dots, our various dots that we have. So we have these dots here, these big ones here. We have these smaller ones that are inside the pretzel looking shapes. And then we have these that go around the center. And these are all just a splatter circular using, is this using an image input? It is. You could also do just a circle on that, but I happen to use the image input, so there it is. This guy though, I did take him using, I found out my radius, 0.19, pattern size, 0.04, pattern scale, 0.95. So I did all of that, and then this guy just rotated him a little bit to make sure that they would be in between these little flower petal things there. So that's the only real change I needed to make for him. For these others, it's just a matter of how far out do I want them. And again, this is the kind of thing that is much easier to do if you connect it all up and then you're working on it down the way. You can come back to it and say, oh, let me make an adjustment. You can watch it in the 3D view here and you can see what's going on. Okay, same thing here. Literally just a bit further out, a bit more on the radius, a bit more on the pattern size. I played with some real tiny numbers to get exactly the right kind of feel that I wanted for this. So it turned out really nice, I think. Okay, so we got our dots, we got our circles, the corner dots. Yeah, we didn't talk about those yet. We talked about our corner lines and our corner circles, but what about our corner dots? So that's these dots here in the corner. These things, it turned out pretty nice. These little guys in each corner. So as you can see here, we take our transform of our shape again. This smaller one worked out perfectly. I just move them up into the corner, blend him with a transform horizontal mirrored version of himself, and then blend him with a transform vertical mirrored version of himself. And then this transform, I rotated it and then blended it back together, and you see you get perfect in the little corners there. So that works out quite nicely. We're moving right along with all the masks here. So let's talk about down here our floral. This is pretty interesting. We'll skip around a bit. The floral stuff was interesting. So for the floral, that's what I'm calling this little part in the middle here, all these shapes. So I took a shape node, and this is the ridged bell. And I don't think I had to change much about it. I pushed the scale all the way up. Transform, I made it quite a bit taller. You can see here, quite a bit taller. And then I hit it with a levels. And hitting it with a levels and crunching everything down, I got this nice eye slit. Kind of reminds me of like an eye if you were to put the circle in the middle. So we get that shape from there. So that's using the ridged bell. And I stretched it way too far beyond the capabilities here, and then said, you know what, let's just clamp the values, and that gives me what I need. So then I'm going to transform, make it quite a bit smaller, and then doing the same trick again here where I transform, make a slightly smaller version of it, and then blend it as a subtract on top of itself. That gave me this cutout. As you can see here, that's these shapes here. So that cutout goes into a splatter circular. You get a nice little shape going on there. And then this, what I did was I took the same transform 2D thing here with another splatter circular and adjusted all the values. And when I blend on top of it with a subtract, you'll see what I get here. I get just those outer petals, but that inner, that secondary flower shape is cut out of it. And then these are all just temporary colors in here that I was using in order to visualize that. So you can see there's the first one, then there's this guy, then a slightly smaller one, and I cut it out again to create this secondary shape, and that's that color. And then we put those together so I can start to visualize a clear definition between them. And then this guy is same thing again, but he's coming from up here, and he's actually I rotated him or changed the radius a bit so that he could be more up and down. And then there you go, you get the color for that one, and then slap him on top. Now these don't go anywhere, they're not connected to anything at the end. These were just my working colors to make sure I could test it out. And all of this, as you can see, all of these lines go off into the mask factory. So they get used later on. Okay, moving right along. Over here we have our outer oval details. So these are the things I've been calling pretzels, these little things on the corners. I like them. They were an interesting shape, and they were a really good challenge to make. So let's take a look at how we did that. So this is pulling directly from this shape here. So that's our cutout for our little petal, we'll call it, and really kind of extended him quite a bit. Then what I did was I took a splatter circular to get my circles at about the right distance, so they would kind of, the bottom would kind of curve out right here. And I did an edge detect in order to get these ring-like shapes. And as you can see here, kind of blend them together. That's working out nicely. And then here, this is coming down from here, so I have to explain this first. So this is our shape again, and then doing the whole get it just a ring. And by putting those together, you see that ring cuts through the circles just right. And then here, this is, I think this is an intermediary just to get our mask going on. Let me see, where is he coming from? He's coming from right there, yeah. Because then when we blend, you see what we're getting here, we're blending between these guys, using this guy as the opacity. Okay, so we got rid of that middle part. Now we need to get rid of the top parts of the circles. And that's where we come from here and say, oh, you know what? As long as it's inside this circle, it's perfect. So do that with a copy, and there you go. We take out everything except the little pretzel-like shapes that we need. Now, again, here's another, this was a temporary color. If I dock that, there you go. This was a temporary color to make sure that I could see it on the form quite well. But as you can see here, we're done, and then I transform, make them just a little bit smaller. And the reason for that was to make more room for these outer dots that we have here. And then here I'm taking the same thing, and I have to do the same transform again, but this is without using these skeletal structure. I'm just using the solid circles because I need those same shapes, and you'll see why in a moment. For the masking, that was important. So I just copied this transform and put it here and put this guy into it instead, so we get the same shapes and those overlap. Perfect. Okay, so those are done. So now let's talk about the starburst. yeah, we can probably get through all of the masks in this episode and start talking about how those work. Okay, so for the inner starbursts, what I did was I took our shape here and again made it basically a line. It's at 0.005, very, very small. Splatter circular to spin it all around and get that lines, all the lines going outward. Then in here we throw that in there and we're going to use a cutout. And you see this cutout's not perfect at first, but that's okay. I did a splatter circular until I was happy with this inward shape. This is what I was worried about, is this black section in the middle, and that looked pretty good. So then I'm going to invert that and throw that in there as the mask. And you see here, if you ignore these little bits on the end, because they're going to go away, but these lines are basically perfect. That's what we need in the middle. Okay, so then I needed to get just this little trim along the edge of it, and I'm not even actually using that in the final version here. But as you see down here, we work on the trim in a second here. So we'll talk about the trim in a second. But up here, so we got this guy, we can add that trim, and then here, using my colors, so I was just throwing these colors together. So I got this, and then I can say, you know what, I want just that middle donut portion. I want just that. And then using that as my mask, I say anything in that area is okay, but cut out that middle area because that's where we're going to have other stuff. And there you get the final shape here, which looks really nice. And yeah, I ended up not even really using this final trim here, but the way this works, this is an edge detect from our shape here, using another transform here for the circle, and then invert that and then say anything inside of that is okay. Anything outside of that is what gets rid of all these external little extra clippings here on the ends. That's what gets rid of that. And then same trick, but this time this one actually gets a little bigger. And then by blending the two together, I get this little trim. And this is supposed to be another piece that's like this, where it's kind of like this thick bar. And I would just go around and cap this whole thing together. But I didn't end up using that. I think it looks really good the way it is. I don't know. That would be a little too much in that area, I think. So that's okay. And then here we got a leftover from as I was building things. Okay, I think that's everything. We talked about all of the masks. We have all of our masks here. Oh, no, we do have one more section of masks to talk about, the outer frame. So this is another shape, but this time it had to be a different shape because we need a square. Scale it down just a little bit, and then using some clever blending there, we get just our edge. And then transform, I'm going to pull it down just a little bit because I did not want it to be all the way at the edge again. Okay? So that's our final mask, I believe. That's our outer square frame. And here's where I started to do some combining before I said, you know what, let's just make a mask factory. So we can talk about that really quick, and then next time we'll go over the normal and the height, I think. But we'll see how we're going. We're still good on time. So in our mask factory, we've got a lot going on here, so let's just go top to bottom. So a lot of these are just the final build from all of these brought over as a mask. So here we have those globes in the center, so that is a color to mask. If I follow this line, that is a color to mask from this to say I want just that center part, and that's what we use to build up this. Okay, so let's go back over there. Same kind of thing, bringing these over. Here are our corner dots. Here's the, I think I used those twice. Is that the same thing twice? Yeah, same thing twice, but I use it in two different ways. Then over here we have a couple things that we didn't end up using because I ended up using them differently, but these are all of our individual masks. So I have the center part here. I got the next floral, the next floral. Here's our inner ring. Here's our outer ring with our lines. Here's our outer edge. Now this guy actually gets broken up. As you can see in here, we bring him over, and I'm actually cutting out this outer part. So this outer part is this guy with the dots added in. So there you go. And I had to cut that out, and then I think, yeah, cut out the rest of it as well, because this is what actually gives us these borders. Because if you look at the reference, these are not connected. This line actually goes kind of under these, and we didn't want that to be connected. Okay, so back over here, starburst lines, there we go. Tried to label them as I could. Starburst trim, and that's the area, that's the mask area of that. Now here was some clever masking because we took the lines and the area, and I cut the lines out of the area, and then I cut out of that the up here, I think I use it up there, yeah. I cut out of that the circle in the center there. So now what we have is we have everything for the starburst. So that's what ends up with these nice looking clean plates. Then here we have our little pretzel things, and here's the ovals with the holes cut out. See, with dots cut out of the mask. We needed that. We couldn't just take this because we needed that space available for these little for these dots to go in that place. So that's why we needed to cut those out. And then here I was cutting out further. I think I was gonna use that to further sub to put more color in there, but it got a little too busy, so we ended up not using that. But that's okay. So then here, just bringing over all of our different masks for our dots. And this was kind of a combination mask, so that I could cut out of that if I wanted to put different colors in there. Okay, so that's all those. Then up here, the big master build. So this is the mask build for everything that was going to end up being metal. So you can see here, it's just combining each element in sequence, just combining them one at a time. It's pretty cool to watch as they all pop into place. Everything that's going to be metal. And you notice here it gets pretty thick and it looks like some things are overlapping each other. But remember, this is just for the colors. This is not for any of our normal or height detail. That actually we're going to cover in just a moment. So this is all for just the coloration of what's going to be metal, and that's everything that became metal. And you can see it looks really nice as we move the light across it. Really shines. I like it a lot. Okay, so moving down here, our final section. This is our normal and height build, and the way this works is everything is basically using a bevel node. So the bevel node here takes a grayscale input. So if I let's see if we can follow this line. Select you. There you go. So he comes up from here. This is the first one. Is the outer ring and these guys. First one I tested. So if I come down here and say, okay, I threw you into the bevel. Now what? He outputs a height and a normal. So the height, I just keep blending the height with the next thing in the sequence. And this is for everything that's going to be metal as well, okay? So I just keep blending those together with add linear dodge. And really what the bevel does a nice job of is giving us this nice soft up to a sharp, up down to a soft again. And that's what we have all over this, and it's so nice. So we just keep blending those in this little tree that keeps cascading downward. You can see we keep adding and adding and adding, and we get to the very bottom here. That's what we end up with. Looks very nice. Now, a few times along the way, you'll notice that some of the circles, some of the more the globes in the corner and these things, for those, I had to change some of the properties. So you'll notice that for this guy, my smoothing is 0.75, and then 0.175. I wanted these to be a bit more round. And then in here, it bumps up to 3. For anything that is perfectly round, I needed it really smooth. So I did have to make some changes to it, but I think that worked out pretty nicely. And then it's just an inverse tree here. So this is cascading downwards, and then at the same time, cascading downwards is the normals. And the normals I just pulled directly from these nodes, and then this is a normal blend. Now, what I needed to do was be very careful about which one is in the top and which one is in the bottom input, because the mask has to come from whatever's in the top input. So by doing that, as we work our way down the tree here, it all just gets added together, and we end up with this. Looks very nice. Over here, these are separate because they had to go on top of everything else. So this is the flower buildup. So you can see there we build that up, flower built up. And then these are the little dots in the corners. And then these are the dots, the inner dots here. So those had to go on top of everything else. So I want to make sure that those came at the last bit. Didn't really matter so much for the height, but for the normal, it does kind of matter. I wanted to make sure they would go in there and that everything is properly masked and on top, and then it's not, see there's a final bit right there, to make sure that nothing got pushed under when it should have been above. So that worked out really nicely. And then over here for our statue metal, it needs an ambient occlusion and a curvature input. So generated an ambient occlusion node, and it takes a height input, which is perfect. That's what we've been building here. And our curvature smooth, it takes a normal input, which is what we've been taking in here. And I did change a few options here for this. I have OpenGL based upon my platform needs. And then in here, I changed the height depth way down, tweaked the radius just a little bit until I was pretty happy with the overall shape and how it ended up looking here for the most part. And then here I just take all these color nodes and I bring them up here. So for our final outputs, our base color is a blend of our one version of our marble and of this guy, which is a blend of a darker marble in the background, and in the foreground is our metal down here coming from the statue metal. So it's metal, and then we have dark marble in the corners here and in the middle here, and then we have the light marble pretty much everywhere else, outside edge, inside here, and that's our base color there. And then down here, this is a level driven normal. We already generated down there, so we just throw that in there. This is our metallic. This is our roughness, which is a blend between the two, from the metal and from the marble. And I just use the one marble because they're both the same as far as their roughness value, because it's the same material, just I changed the colors. So I blended those together, and then I threw them through levels here just to kind of tweak to my liking, and then throw that in there. And see, these are leftovers from when we were building things, so we don't need those. And then our metallic here, same kind of thing. It's just a blend between the two of them. Wanted to make sure that it was metal where it should be metal and it was not where it's not. Pretty simple. And our height we've been building all along, so we just plug that in. And there you go. So it looks big and scary, but it's not really. It's a little complex. I mean, it's a little complex, but it's not complicated. Complex meaning that there's a lot of parts. Complicated meaning that each part is, more in depth than it should be. But no, this is not complicated, but it is complex. And it turned out really nice. I'm really happy that I learned a lot by doing it. I helped somebody out who was asking for help, and I hope that it was informative and entertaining for you guys. And you can look at something like this with a lot more confidence. You say, oh, that's not so bad. It's broken down. It's well labeled. You can kind of find your way around it. There are some graphs that get crazy all over the place, and it's hard to figure out what's going on. Even though I have a lot of lines that are crisscrossing and I'm using things in different places, I really try to make sure everything's labeled and that everything makes sense. That's why it says I'm building up this shape, and over here's all of my masks in one place, so it's easy to find them. And I label areas when I'm doing work, and my final outputs are labeled, so you can find them even from like here. I can say, oh, final outputs over here. Let me go look at that. Try to make sure that it's nice and organized for you guys. So I will work to get this up on the website. May not be today or tomorrow, but I will get it up on the website for you, so you can download it and look at it yourself. And of course, links in the description for the materials that I used from Substance Share. Thank you so much, guys, for hosting that site, and for everybody who made the materials that I used for today's demo. As always, I hope that you've enjoyed, and keep practicing, get better, and I'll see you next time as the pilgrimage continues.